So I asked you to pick a place that was significant to you. Not your house, not your office, a place that's significant. Why did you choose this place?
Well, this, Jalisco, is in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And so always enjoy coming here, like weekend mornings, having breakfast, just me and my mom sometimes. But also, it's an opportunity where you see people, frankly, some people I still went to high school with, right? Still kind of live in the area. And so it's a nice kind of like family feel. And frankly, the food is very good. And also my sister's in the Navy, and it's always special for her to come here and just like finally have a good breakfast taco whenever she's finally in town. So it's a place that is just comfortable, but it's also a nice place to see folks that I've known for years.
How is this race different than other races that you've been in?
Well, I think fundamentally it's always about kind of focused on the issues and what you care about. I think this race is different in large part because of the time in which this race is being run, right? I think many in our community are feeling frankly great anxiety, great uncertainty about what's coming down from the federal level. Whether I get my own care at Audie Murphy, right? And it's already harder to get an appointment. Or even, what's happening with the education system in our community. So I think people uniquely understand kind of what is happening around us that is impacting our economy here in San Antonio, and ultimately what the future looks like for our city, which is why I think there's so much obviously interest in making sure we've got a good mayor, and I look forward to being one.
Just logistically, though, you're talking about a congressional district that went from here to the border almost to El Paso.
Yeah.
Does it have its own unique challenges running for mayor of San Antonio compared to when you ran for Congress?
Well, look, I think, we have focused very hard on and talking about the issues that matter all throughout our community. And as you know, you don't have to drive too far in either direction, and those issues change very quickly just because our city is so economically segregated. So I think, making sure that we are spending time all throughout the city has really been a priority of mine. And I think the election night results show that. The distribution of our support was all throughout the city, and I'm very proud of how hard we've worked, how many doors we knocked on, how many phone calls and texts we've made. But I think ultimately it's about the message that we are carrying, the things we want to work on, and the things that we look forward to. I look forward to delivering for us today.
What do you think San Antonio needs in its next mayor?
I think fundamentally, in this time, I think you've got to have the set of experiences to do the things, right? So I've managed a large budget, $173 billion as the Undersecretary of the Air Force, and led 600,000 folks. So I know how big bureaucracies work. I think it's also really important in this time, though, that we've got a courageous mayor. I think that the ability, frankly, to say, hey, this is where we're going to work together, but oh, by the way, these are the areas in which your actions, either at the federal level or at the state level, they're constraining our ability to grow and provide the things that we know are needed in our community. So I think those two things in tandem are really what the next mayor needs to have.
Are there stereotypes about Gina Ortiz Jones that aren't true? That you want to fight back against or dispel in some way?
You know what is always funny? When people come up to me and they're like, I thought you were like 6 feet tall. Well, I was like, as long as you didn't think I was 6 feet wide, then we're okay.
Yeah.
No, I think maybe the premise of your question is it's different when you are running as a woman for office. It just is. I'm surprised, to be super frank with you, given the challenges in our communities and the opportunities, and frankly, I've got the plan, the things I want to work on first 100 days, and the number of times, Steve, people have told me, you need to smile more. But you know what? Okay, I will do that. I also know that I have what the kids would call RBF. Right? Now, I won't say it on TV because I think people have to
people know what
Google what that is, but I just have a very serious face. And thank you, Mom, for my wonderful cheekbones, but altogether it leads to a very serious face. And I am a serious person on these issues. And I think, when I'm listening to people, I'm in, right? I'm zoned in. And so I think sometimes when people just see kind of a picture or this or that, they think I might be a little bit more serious or more cold, if you will, than I actually am. But I'm having a lot of fun, I'll be honest with you. I think people are excited about the opportunity for our city, and I look forward to making sure that we are well led.
When we talk about being mayor of San Antonio, obviously it's a nonpartisan race. But there are a lot of people that are like, okay, now that it's just you and Rolando Pablos, partisanship is going to play a role. Beyond the election, should it play a role? I mean, should the mayor of San Antonio be involved in issues like abortion, immigration, minimum wage, those kind of things?
I think the mayor needs to be involved in issues that affect the security and the economic security of our community, right? And so look, this is a community, I went to John Jay High School right down the street, right? This is a tough high school, right? Again, a part of town that has traditionally not been as well invested in. And so, yes, I'm going to make sure that we are looking at how we are making smart investments, especially in the long term, especially for communities that have traditionally not been invested in. So I think, nonpartisan doesn't mean no principles, right? I think we've got to be clear and intellectually honest with ourselves about what is political versus what is, no, this is just data. Like, this is what the numbers show us, right? And so, frankly, regardless of how we got here, the data is very clear about the challenges. The data is also very clear about the cost of inaction if we don't try to address these challenges. Because, every person running for office always talks about, the high rate of poverty in our community, which is why one of the things I want to do, Steve, in the first 100 days, and it's on my website, First 100 Days Plan, is let's understand how many kids, how much talent are we leaving on the table as a result of not fully meeting the need for pre-K in our community, and then tell me the bill, right? Like, what is the bill? And then now we as a community can say, okay, this is the cost, this is the opportunity cost, because I would argue that's a bill we can't afford to not pay in light of the inequities in our community. That I don't think is political. Some might think it is, but I think if you're serious about addressing the challenges in our community, you've got to start with the data, because the data is also very clear. I would argue we wouldn't need so much of the Ready to Work program if we had more pre-K for SA. And the data is also very clear about where we have the highest rate of return when we invest in people, and it's always when they're young, right?
Yeah. We've started this thing that I've spearheaded called Know My Neighborhood at KSA, and we go around to different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
We've gone to South San, we've gone to Westwood Square, we've gone to a bunch of different places and said, what do you care about?
Yeah.
A lot of them were sidewalks and curbs and drainage. And if you go around the city, you see different parts of the city that have different things they care about.
Right.
But you also see there seem to be some inequities in different parts of the city.
Steve.
How do you deal with that?
Right. Yeah, and I think, this is a perfect example. Actually, and I spend a lot of time at neighborhood associations. And the other day, a couple months ago at this point, I was at Ingram Hills Neighborhood Association. And that is, Ingram Hills is not unlike Heritage, right? Ingram Hills is over there by Holmes. Heritage is over here, obviously off Marbach. And they were talking about some of the challenges in their community, and they talking about some of the drainage challenges. And so I think that's really important, right? When we as a community are having these discussions about major investments in our community, when people are dealing with some of these kind of lack of basic infrastructure that they would see as important, and that we all would think is important. And so, how can we make sure we're being bold, right? We're being bold with our investments, but also making sure we're meeting kind of some of the basic needs as people would expect to have in our community. I think that's really important. Right, and I think the next mayor, whether it be in the upcoming budget or certainly we would think about the upcoming bond, that's going to need to be informed by those inequities and how we address them.
When it comes to, so that's bread and butter issues there. When it comes to things like abortion, do you think the mayor should weigh in on that?
I think there are economic aspects to a lack of reproductive health care in our community, right? 2022 was the first year in 15 years that Texas saw an increase in teenage pregnancy, and that was directly because of the abortion ban. That is not a political statement, that is a fact. X happened, as a result, Y happened. Data is very clear. When you look at the numbers, though, that is disproportionately being driven by young Latinas. And when you look in our community where folks are not reading at level, math skills are not at level, when you're seeing the increase in teenage pregnancy, it's the same communities, right? So that is in fact an economic issue for us, because you know what that affects? That affects our public health system, that affects our public education system, et cetera. So again, it's about dealing smartly with the consequences of some of these decisions, being intellectually honest about what it's going to require to address these things over the long term, and also being very clear about some of the other consequences that folks might not be really thinking about. I'm very concerned when you have OBGYNs saying they don't want to train in Texas or they don't want to come to Texas. We can only grow as fast and as smartly as we have enough doctors to meet the needs in our community. So, I will work with whoever to bring good jobs here to San Antonio. That'd be one of my top priorities. I think we also have to be intellectually honest with folks about, hey, this is also where we could use your help, because this is constraining our ability to grow the way that we want to grow.
Yeah. Were you surprised that you got 27% of the vote on election night with 26 other candidates?
Steve, I don't get outworked. I don't get outworked. My team doesn't get outworked. I'm so proud of the strong showing that we had. But look, the work is not done, right? And so we're very excited to continue knocking on doors, making the phone calls, and really talking about what's at stake and what we can get done with the right leader.
What did you learn from, what did you take from your congressional races that you think is what did you learn from them that you think is benefiting you this time around? If that's a fair question.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I think fundamentally running for office is always about, trying to demonstrate to people that, one, you can do the job, you can do it, right? You've got the capacity to do it, but also you've got the courage to do it, right? It's one thing to know a policy and to know it's the right thing. It's another thing to say, and now we're going to get it done, right? And so I think that always having those conversations and having those informed by people's, frankly, lived experiences, whether it be, again, insufficient drainage in communities, some of the challenges with finding, for example, if you're a military spouse, finding a good job for you, some of the childcare challenges in our community that are also impacting, somebody's ability to work as many hours as they would actually like to, which ultimately then is an economic issue for our community. I think the fundamentals are the same. What do you care about? Well, this is how I would go about addressing that.
Yeah. I want to hit this issue head on.
Okay.
Because I don't want there to be anything left unsaid.
Okay.
Is there anything you would have changed about election night when it comes to dealing with the media?
Yeah, I would. So, it's interesting. I provided the statement to the press, as folks saw.
When you stepped outside the door, right?
Yeah,
yes.
When I stepped outside the door, I provided my comments. And, the plan, and that was a party that was open to everybody except the press. And, honestly, the team had worked very hard. And I wanted folks to, just relax a little bit and enjoy. And I knew people would be a little bit, constrained if there was press around. So I just really wanted folks to enjoy that moment. I know how hard they'd worked. And the plan was always, as I shared with your colleague, that we were going to go celebrate with San Antonio. We were going to go celebrate the San Antonio way. And I was very thankful to be able to, walk a couple of blocks and enjoy the last bit of the Flambeau Parade. And get some high fives from folks that had voted for me, and I'm thankful that we were able to share that time with them.
Yeah. Anything you would have done differently?
I think we could have told folks, hey, this is what we're going to do. But I think we were very clear that, hey, Gina's going to come out at this point. She's going to provide a statement.
No questions.
Well, people, I have been, frankly, an open book in this. I've been to 30 some odd forums. I'm sitting with you now, right? We've done a lot of press. And so I think that one night was, that one night was one night, to be honest.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
I didn't want to not talk about that,
I appreciate that
in this entire thing. When you look at, obviously, I've watched some of your forums leading up to the debate.
Impressive, huh, Steve?
Yeah. Project Marvel
seems
to be something that's a hot topic, even though we don't know the details at this point. Is it fair to say you're against Project Marvel?
That is completely unfair and is untrue. I want to make sure we have the data. To your point, we don't have a lot of details. And I think we need, to get some answers to some pretty basic questions. How much is it going to cost? Who is going to pay for it? And how is the city going to benefit? right? I think absent those answers to those three questions, we're still very early on in the conversations. But I think, look, I think it's an opportunity. It could be this generational investment could be an opportunity to address our generational inequities, right? If we've got a good deal for San Antonio, and that's what I would be focused on, right? So again, let's make sure we've got some data that we're all kind of talking about. Because I think, look, as I talked to in these same neighborhood association meetings, it is also a hot topic for them.
Yeah.
Folks are, concerned about the fact that the process was under wraps due to non-disclosure agreements, and it's such a high bill, right? So in their eyes, it has raised the question of, okay, well, what else are y'all working on that, that we would want to be informed of? I think folks also look at kind of the history, right, of publicly financed sports venues in our community. The promise around the Alamo Dome, right, that using public dollars to build that would make us competitive for an NFL football team. That was not the case. Though the Browns are cool, it's not an NFL football team, right? Yeah. Similarly, and Nelson Wolff has shared this, that the deal that he negotiated was in exchange for public dollars to build the AT&T Center, that the people would receive 20% of Spurs profits each year. And he Judge Nelson Wolff has said that we got zero over 20 years. So I think when people read that, they want to know, okay, how can we get a good deal? How can we be sure we're going to get a good deal this time? And that's why I think, answering those three basic questions so everybody understands how this could benefit San Antonio in the immediate and in the long term is really important. And I look forward to that ongoing conversation.
What does the city of San Antonio look like with Gina Ortiz Jones as mayor? What do you hope it looks like 4 years from now? What do you hope it looks like 8 years from now?
Yeah. Well, I think I have laid out on my website the things I'd like to work on in the first 100 days, so pretty immediately, right? And a lot of that is based on getting the data to make sure we're making smart investments, whether it be around pre-K for SA. I've talked about some of the immediate things I'd like to do as well to address some of the needs in our community. How quickly can we repurpose some of these recently closed schools into pre-K for SA or into childcare? I think it's also really important that what you do, how you do something is as important as what you're doing. And so I think, and I'm excited about doing them. I hope folks are excited about coming to them. Every month I said I would do an in-person town hall, right? And this is something that's been on my website since 100 days out from the election, in fact, when I launched the plan. Because again, I think it's really important to go into communities, see for yourself, and look people in the eye and hear their feedback about what's working well, what's not working well, and what are their ideas on how to improve their communities in our city. So I've committed to an in-person town hall every month, rotating throughout the city council districts, right? So that is something I am very excited about, and I think in the process of that, we as a city can have much more fulsome conversations, and people can feel maybe a little bit more kind of bought in, and that City Hall is responsive to the things that they care about.
Yeah. And we do a KSAC Q&A with Mayor Nurnberg right now every Tuesday he can make it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have you be part of that.
Absolutely.
Should you win.
Yeah. I would say, I think at the, and some of these things they take longer to see, obviously, the impact of some of these things.
Yeah.
But that investment in pre-K for SA, I mean, that is a generational change, right? I mean, we meet a fraction of the need now. But if we're serious about addressing poverty, if we are serious about setting our young people up for success, that is the thing that I think, can't afford to not do, right? So some of these things you won't see after 4 years or only 8 years. I do look forward also to in the upcoming bond, right? We've got an opportunity to make sure we're making smart investments in the infrastructure. I think it's really important that we are listening to these builders and developers that are saying, hey, it takes too long to spend that bond money. The money is approved. How can we spend it faster so people can see the results of those investments in their community, right? So look forward to that. The topic I hear a lot about as well is housing affordability. And so the upcoming bond, we've got another opportunity to make sure we're really increasing the supply in our community. I look forward to being bold and aggressive on that because that's what folks are asking about.
Last question.
Yeah.
As we tape this, see, I'm showing my age here. As we record this, we are about a week away from our debate on KSAC.
Yeah.
What do you hope people take from that debate? What's your goal during that debate and really all of these forums that you've been having?
Well, I think, one, they would understand I am focused on making sure that we deliver real results for our community. I'm prepared to do that. I've got the courage to do that. I've got a plan to do that. And I look forward to working with the rest of the city council to deliver on those results. And when you look at my record in public service, it has always been about delivering results. As the Undersecretary of the Air Force, yes, we were focused on making sure, our men and women had what they needed to be successful, and we were making smart investments. But I'm also very proud of the ways in which I knocked down barriers so that people could serve to their full potential. People should look at the record of my opponent. And when he was in public service, how he used his time. He was sued by the League of Women Voters and the NAACP for engaging in activities that could lead to voter intimidation. When he was on the Utility Commission, he voted to increase rates on people, even after something like the Uri storm. So I think it's really important that you look at what somebody has done, and frankly to who that person is beholden. My opponent owes a lot to Greg Abbott, and that could mean disastrous impacts for our city.
Are you worried about this election getting nasty?
San Antonio is worth fighting for.
All the questions I have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.